So I have a question this week, and the question is, what do you do when you hit a creative drought, dry spell, don't want to create, uninspired? Stay tuned. We got you. All right, everybody worldwide, this is Motivation and Confidence, where we help you do your daily best. And I'm your host, Tom Danger. So the question is, wait, before we go any further, please like, subscribe, share. Appreciate you riding with us on the journey. But the question is, what do you do when you reach the creative drought? And I had this discussion with my wife, and I had to take it a step back to think about, where do you get your creativity from? And I think growing up, most of it came from telling stories. So you say, Tommy, like, we all tell stories, or we all listen to stories, and we all heard stories. But in our household growing up, a story was used to withhold information from the public, right? So let's say, realistically, I literally had two pair of pants, two pair of jeans or pants to wear to school. And I had to rotate one pair every other day for the entire week. And I had 3 shirts. I was not to go to school and repeat that I only had 2 pair of pants. You don't put your business in the street like that, right? So that first form of creative storytelling came from making up lies. We call it like telling a tale, tattletaling, right? You had to tell a tale to keep people from asking you certain questions. So you had to get creative. You had to think of different things that you could say on the fly to people to keep them from asking you questions, or so that when they did ask you a question, you could sort of find a way to blow them off. So then as you get older, so it's like your parents are telling you that it's okay to tell a story to the outer world, but you can't tell a story to your parents, because if you tell a story to your parents, now you're going to get in trouble. Because it's sort of like, don't lie to me. But you just told me that I needed to lie to Miss Jones when she asked me why I got on the same blue pants from Monday, right? And I know that's a little far-fetched, but truthfully it's true. I mean, literally I had 2 pair of pants, and I don't think people question me, but sometimes other adults will question how you raise your children and why they don't have the things that other people have had. So you learn how to tell a story. So we don't learn that there's an on and off switch to the storytelling. It's just like you learn to tell a story. When you want to withhold that information, and I can only speak for the household that I grew up in, it's not like all households were like that, even though I'm pretty sure that there's some that shared that type of experience where, unfortunately, bad things happen in a household, and it was sort of like, you better not tell the truth. You had to think about what was going on, and if you told somebody else what was going on, that meant that you were going to get in trouble. So you're learning this skill of telling stories. And then also as a kid, your creativity came from your imagination. So if you didn't have a particular toy or access to certain things that other people had, you had to figure out how to make your things work. If you didn't have a particular style of clothing, you had to figure out how you could modify your clothes to make it look like acid wash jeans. You take the bleach you used to like splash, you take that shit in the bathtub and you lay down the jeans, because acid wash jeans was like a big deal. You sprinkled the bleach on it, and it was like, it looked real funky at first, because like it would turn like that yellow when it break down the blue. And then if it got real good, then that white spot will like bust through like overnight, and then you hang it up. Now you got acid wash jeans. So you ain't got the Guess jeans like everybody else, but you figured out how to make, acid wash jeans. And then you want to put some cuts in it, so then you got like a box cutter. You put little cuts in it to like hook it up, right? Our levels of creativity. I mean, our levels of creativity went even deeper than that when it came to food, right? If you didn't have a particular thing to eat, you had to get real creative on, like, yo, I used to eat a lettuce sandwich like it was nobody's business. You would think that it had roast beef on it, but I would just get 2 slices of white bread with some mayonnaise. I put some salt and pepper on it. And, damn, this sounds horrible, right? With a piece of lettuce. And I just ate it. And although I'm saying that it sounds horrible, but it was being creative with what was in the refrigerator so that you could come up with something. You may not have had money to go to the store to buy snacks like everybody else, so you had to figure it out. You know what I mean? I was just watching a TikTok where a good friend of mine was showing like Takis back in the day in Korea, where they just ate ramen noodles with like pepper on it, like just with the seasoning on it. They would crack it and just eat it like the best snack ever. If that's not creativity, then I don't know what is. So just in those instances, and then another thing was like playing games, right? Like we had to make up, like, it's not like now where kids just have a phone and they're entertained by what's directly in front of them and it's very passive. Like, no, like you had to exercise the muscle. Like, we can play freeze tag, we can play kick the can, we can play hot peas and butter, we can play house, like we gonna play something. Like, I'm tired of playing that game. Mother May I, Duck Duck Goose. Like, even as I'm rambling these off, like we had a bunch of games that we could play. Ring Around the Rosie, that's not even a game, that's just something you were saying. But coming up with songs, dances, because we didn't have the resources. So it's sort of like when you have less, you're forced to be creative. Because if you don't even think of something to do or how to make it work, then you don't have it. And I think the question for today comes from the place of, okay, now you have the internet, you have electronic devices, you have YouTube videos, you have people who will literally teach you how to do things. And still people are at one of the most creative droughts ever. Whereas the people who are creative, or even the people who are not creative, they figured out how to just copy everything else that's going on. But we've changed up the term from copy. We call it a trend, right? You're not copying anybody. You're riding the wave of a trend, and that's cool. Whereas years ago, certain trends were cool, but you didn't copy it exactly. Like, you didn't just do the trend. You had to put your own spin on it. So if you did a dance, if you had clothes, if you had a rhyme style, if you wrote poetry, if you sang, you put your own twist on it. Whereas now you have the ability to get instant fame based on a number, right? And it's sort of like the algorithm is now the lottery. You start with 0, whatever, and within a matter of minutes or a couple of hours, you can have thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions, tens of millions, or whatever, to give you a certain level of attention that makes you feel validated by another person's attention. So we become attention seekers, attention whores, as we just want the attention. So then comes the point of, okay, cool, you did that one thing to hold our attention. Let me see you do it again. Let me see you do it again. Let me see you do it again. So after a while, you're saying like, wow, I've done this 20, 30 times, and now I'm not getting the same attention that I got before. So what am I to do? Part of where different ways that creative drought comes into, because then the easy thing to do is just jump on the wave of another trend, right? Just to keep the number going. But is that enough to keep you creative? So to answer the question, when you reach that creative drought, I really think a couple things. I would say two things. The first thing is look back to that inner child. What did you do when you were a kid? When you were a kid, for the most part, you didn't care what other people thought about when you created stuff. You just wanted to create something. You just wanted to make something. Remember we would get like the construction paper and crayons? Actually, we didn't have crayons. We had crayons, right? Those like crayons that had like the soft melt to it. And you'd be in art class and you get free draw. And you just be like, yo, make something. And you just let your hand just go. So part of your creative drought is stop looking for the finished product and just make something. Like I was speaking to another friend of mine, and they were talking about the creative process, and my response was, I want you to make the shittiest video ever. Because when you go into it with the expectation that you have to make something that looks along the lines of what you've seen, some of us, we automatically overthink it, and when you overthink it, you're not going to execute anything. You're just going to get stuck in the thought process. And when you get stuck in the thought process, for the overthinkers, we call that decision fatigue. You're just thinking about it to think about it, you think about it, think about it, think about it, and you never do anything. So you just make to make. Good, bad, ugly, and different. When you're making, let's say if you're a songwriter and you're having writer's block. Let's say you've written hits or you've just written some really good songs. You feel like you can't write another good song. My mentor, DJ Left, would say, you know what? Take a break and do something totally different from what you do. I'm not sure if many of you had seen when Kanye West got ready for this show when he was, doing the listening party. But before the listening party, he was playing Mario Brothers. Totally different from probably what he had been engaged into putting this project together, and something totally different before he got ready to rock the set. But you're engaged in a different part of the creative process. You're playing the game. I got to figure out how to get to the next level.
Or people, like you say, like J. Cole or the Wu-Tang, where they go back to those settings from the beginning when they were created.
That brings you back to acting like a child, right? Because when you're a child, you've learned to create with less. And that's why they put themselves in those conditions. When you put yourself in a condition of not having as much, you're now forcing yourself to get to that space. And when you talk about a J. Cole or Wu-Tang or any collective, when you surround yourself by other creatives, there's a force that comes in the room. So it's sort of like, I may not feel as creative, but if one person in the room is super inspired, that's transferable. Now you good money, right? It creates a synergy. So it could just be your one line or your drum pattern or your bass or just your thought, your contribution to it that can make, it could be like somebody told me, when you have a bunch of cooks in the kitchen, it can be the person that puts that garnish on the plate that can set the whole thing off. So you can have a beautiful or well-balanced plate, but it's just missing that one little element. And when that person puts that extra garnish on it, you're like, ooh, yeah, that's what it was missing, right? So you have that. And it is cool to take a break. I'm not saying that. It's always good to take a break if you feel as if you've exhausted what you're doing and do absolutely nothing. Miss it. Like, it's like, you know, you got that person you're in love with, you see them all the time, and then all of a sudden they go away for a little while. You're like, man. When you see them again, like, yo, I didn't realize how much I missed you. So you also have to give yourself a break from creating, and sometimes, just like I was saying with the game, but you do something totally different. Like if you're into writing, cook. If you're into cooking, sew. So it's sort of like learn a new skill or trait that has nothing to do with what you've done, to force you to get in a different frame of mind. Another thing that I've seen that's pretty cool too is that when you talk about learning a different skill, is like traveling to a different area, and this doesn't have to be outside of the country, but just in your own neighborhood or in your circles, to see how people do things differently. So like, again, if you're into music, a good friend of mine, shout out to Face, go around techno people, like technology people, just to see like how they put things together, you know. Again, like if you're into life coaching, hang around artists, right, to see like how they do things. Again, if you are a chef, like you're hanging around like an auto mechanic to see like how they do things. So when you have that broad range of things that you can look at and do it without any expectation, it puts you in a different gauge. So again, the main things that I recommend is tap into that inner child. It's okay to take a break. Surround yourself with other creatives and learn something or do something that you've never done before. And don't be so hard on yourself if it doesn't come to you right away. When it's meant to come to you, it'll come to you. This is Motivation and Confidence, where we help you do your daily best.
That was beautiful.
First stop.
Oh.